Welcome to another episode of Paragon's Favorite Stuff. In this show, I tell you about all of the things that I've found most useful in my 26 years of living aboard sailboats and voyaging all over the Atlantic. First, thanks for all of the great comments you made in our last video about the Watch Commander. In case you missed that one, then click on the link right here to get caught up. Today I'm going to go over a really cool piece of gear, literally, our refrigerator. In 2009, I installed a marine refrigeration and freezing system aboard my boat called the CoolBlue. It's made by a company in California called Technautics. We've had our CoolBlue running non-stop for the past 11 years straight, and I can honestly say that we're really happy with it. The installation was easy, and the performance and reliability have been great. I like that the CoolBlue's compressor is air-cooled instead of being water-cooled, and I like that it freezes a thick and indestructible holding plate in the refrigerator box instead of a thin and delicate evaporator plate, as I'll explain. So again, we've been running our CoolBlue system trouble-free for the past 11 years, but then finally, just recently, and for the first time ever, our CoolBlue stopped working. The compressor stopped running, and instead it just kept flashing an error code. I contacted Technautics, and they worked with me to figure out what went wrong. They concluded that a component of the system called a controller had failed, and that we could probably get our compressor back up and running again by replacing this one part. Now, in full disclosure, Technautics did send me a replacement controller and also a brand new thermostat, and they only charged me for the shipping. But I promise you that I'm just going to tell you like it is. Let's take a brief look at the components of the system. Here's a photo that I took from the Technautics website. This is exactly what I received in the box when I bought it in 2009. That blue thing is the compressor. I'm not a refrigeration expert by any means, but my basic understanding is that the compressor circulates refrigerant under pressure. The CoolBlue's compressor comes pre-charged with R134A refrigerant, runs on either 12 or 24 volts, and can be installed anywhere that has a vent for air circulation. It has a built-in fan that keeps it from overheating, and it's rated to work in ambient temperatures of up to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. This enabled us to install ours in the engine room, where it can get really hot when we're running the engine. When the compressor runs, it circulates refrigerant through two long copper tubes that connect to a holding plate in your insulated refrigerator box. When the refrigerant gets to the holding plate, it causes it to freeze. There's also a thermostat control knob that you install in the refrigerator box. It has a sensing tube which you attach to the holding plate, and also two wires which go to the compressor. When the thermostat detects that the holding plate has reached the desired temperature, it sends a signal to the compressor telling it to turn off. The holding plate is filled with a solution that stays frozen for a long time, so it takes a long time for the holding plate to thaw out to the point where the compressor has to turn back on to refreeze the holding plate. Now, this system is different than another type of marine refrigeration that uses an evaporator plate instead of a holding plate. An evaporator plate is a very thin plate with refrigerant tubes going through it. The evaporator plate freezes, but unlike the thick holding plate, the thin evaporator plate doesn't retain the cold for very long after the compressor turns off. So, with an evaporator plate, the compressor has to cycle on and off much more frequently. Before I got the CoolBlue, I actually went through a few evaporator plate refrigeration systems. I don't know about all the evaporator plates available on the market today, but the ones that I had before were made of painted aluminum and were really delicate. With the first one, I actually nicked the evaporator plate just trying to get it installed in the refrigerator box, which then leaked all the refrigerant out. Another time, I was trying to remove a layer of ice that had built up on the evaporator plate, and once again nicked a leak in the plate. Of course, if your evaporator plate starts leaking refrigerant, then you've lost your refrigeration. I far prefer the CoolBlue's holding plate to the evaporator plate systems that I had before, because the holding plate is a practically indestructible stainless steel box. It's so tough that sometimes I even use a metal scraper to scrape the ice off that develops on the holding plate. That copper tubing that circulates the refrigerant between the compressor and the holding plate also comes pre-charged with R134A refrigerant. Technautics can sell you a custom length of this tubing, letting you mount the compressor and the holding plate up to 30 feet away from each other. Being able to have the compressor and the holding plate that far apart from each other worked out great for us, because the best place on our boat to put the compressor was all the way back in the engine room. I measured the distance by running a tape measure through where I was planning to install the tubing, and then ordered exactly 24 feet of tubing. Finally, these white sticks in the photo are mounting brackets used to mount the holding plate inside your refrigerator box. So those are the components of the system. Now, let me show you our installation. Here's our refrigeration box. Can you believe it was made in 1976? Everything here is original except for a couple of things that I added, like this slide-out egg drawer and also this flip-up counter table. Now I'll show you inside. On the left we have a refrigeration side. We use this side for storing mostly vegetables, milk, cold cuts, cheese, stuff like that. Usually we've got just about everything in there organized in these little plastic food storage containers. And then on the right side we have this freezer compartment. We use this side for storing frozen meats and vegetables, and there have even been a few times when we've caught lots of fish and froze them in plastic bags in here. If I remove this lid, you can see that there's this wall in between the fridge side and the freezer side. The holding plate's in the freezer side, and it gets so cold that everything in there gets frozen. And a little bit of the cold from the freezer side goes into the refrigerator side over the top of the wall, and also through a small hole that's in the wall right about at the mid-height of the wall. Just enough to keep everything in the fridge side cold enough without freezing it. This is the original thermostat. Somewhere along the line I lost the white knob that turned this post to set the desired temperature. The thermostat is connected to this sensing tube, which you insert in this little copper pipe welded into the holding plate. The thermostat also has these two wires which go to the compressor. As you can see, after 11 years of use, the thermostat has gotten a little bit crusty, so we're going to replace it today. I'm just going to move the camera down into the freezer so that you can see the copper tubing right there. Both the holding plate and the copper tubing come pre-charged with R134A refrigerant, and the couplings are self-sealing. So when you connect the tube to the holding plate, the seal opens up so the refrigerant can flow. I've got the copper tubing and also the wires from the thermostat going into a little hole right there, where it then goes into a locker and then down underneath the floorboards, where it then goes into the engine room. Okay, let's head on in. Here's the engine. You can see right down there the copper tubing where it comes through the bulkhead. From there it goes up to the compressor on this shelf right here. The compressor has 4 holes in the base for mounting it in place so it doesn't move when the boat's underway. And I've taken those bolts out so that I can pull the compressor out. Okay. And coming down. There we go. Now we can get a better look at the components. I'm going to point out the controller, this black box. It has electrical connections that we're concerned with here. These two go to the fan that's mounted on the compressor, and then these two go to either 12 or 24 volt power. I've got these power wires going to a circuit breaker in the galley. Actually, let me power it on so I can show you how it's not working. But first, I forgot to mention that the thermostat wires normally go to these two pins that have the jumper cable on them now. When I was first troubleshooting the compressor, I replaced the thermostat wires with this jumper cable to try to force the compressor to turn on. Unfortunately, it didn't work. Here's the circuit breaker panel. Here's the refrigeration circuit breaker. I'm going to turn that on. And then we'll go back into the engine room. I'll show you the little error light. That sound that you hear is the fan. Fan is running, but the compressor is not running. When the compressor runs, you can feel a little bit of vibration in this part of it. And also we're getting these 3 red flashes, an error code telling us that the compressor is not running. After we checked a bunch of other things, Technautics thinks that the controller itself has failed, and so we're gonna replace it now. Here's the box that we got from Technautics that should have the new controller and also a new thermostat inside. Brand new thermostat. And this is the sensing tube that connects to the holding plate that detects the temperature. And then the wires that go to the thermostat connect to these 2 pins right here. Ooh. So let's get this installed and keep fingers crossed. I sure hope this works. First I'll undo the power connections and then undo the fan connections. You can remove the controller by undoing this little Phillips head screw. Oops. Where'd that go? There it is. And then it should just pull out. Wow. The new one will go there. It's got this plug. So I guess I just pull this out. Okay. We have removed the old controller. And now we'll put the new one on. That's on. The new controller didn't come with this tiny circuit board with the flashing error light on it, and also these 2 little dip switches. This looks like it was just glued on to the old controller. It has this little plug that goes into this socket. So I'm going to have to reuse this. I'm going to pry this thing off and then figure out how I'm going to attach it onto this one. For the moment, I'm just going to plug this in just to see if it works. Ah! Yeah! I hear the compressor moving. Yes! So that sound that you hear is the compressor. Yeah, I feel a vibration. It's running. Ha! And we're getting no error light. So, oh, this is so exciting. I am so happy to hear that compressor running again. I'm going to take this thermometer and actually put it in the fridge box. You can see right now it's reading 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh yeah, I can hear it. I can hear the refrigerant going through the holding plate. And yeah, it's cold. It's cold to the touch. It's fantastic. All right, so 70 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll put this down in the fridge and we will check it in an hour. Yep, it's working. It looks cold in there. 16 degrees Fahrenheit. It's been running for about 12 hours. We just let the compressor run all night. Now all I have to do is swap out this thermostat for the new one. disconnect those two wires that go to the compressor. Yeah, as you can see, after 11 years, the thermostat's gotten pretty crusty. There we go. I broke the sensing tube. Well, it's going away. There we go. Here's the new one. Let's see. Holder and then off, I guess. One to 7. The sensing tube is going through a little copper tube at the underside of the holding plate. I can't really show you that, but it's down there. And take out the old one. I'm gonna uncoil the new one. Gonna route that behind the holding plate. And I'm going to put the excess tube just behind the holding plate. When the thermostat determines that the compressor needs to run, it just short circuits these two wires together like a solenoid, and then the compressor runs. Now the box is good to go. Now we'll hook the wiring up to the compressor. These are the wires that connect to the thermostat in the refrigerator box, and I'm going to connect them to these two pins that have the jumper cable on them. Right now the compressor is just running flat out, but once we put these wires on, the compressor will only run when the thermostat tells it to. The compressor just turned off. Now the fridge is pretty cold. Let's see if the thermostat thinks it's cold enough. 1, 2. Yup. The fridge is cold enough right now, so the thermostat's not telling the compressor to turn on. Beautiful. Now I just have to get the compressor back up on the shelf, and we are done. All right. The careful part. I hope you've enjoyed this look at our refrigeration system. If you'd like more information on the CoolBlue, then check out the links that we've put in the video description. Do you have a CoolBlue unit on your boat? If so, how has it worked for you? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, then please don't forget to click like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.